The LED lights sliced the backstage into cold white slices, casting harsh shadows on faces. The smell of hairspray mixed with nervousness hung in the low humping air conditioning. Dora clutched her portfolio to her chest, feeling the leather heat beneath her trembling fingers. In the background, the metallic sound of hangers clashing and the steady click of heels on the polished marble floor. 15 models waited in line. Silvana, her platinum hair tied in a flawless bun, didn't look up from her rose-gold iPad, not when Dora approached, not when she whispered, "Good afternoon." The silence weighed like molten lead. Silvana finally looked up. Her eyes ran up and down Dora, like someone assessing a defective garment. Her eyebrow arched in calculated contempt. "Honey, you're at the wrong casting." Her voice had the poisonous sweetness of crystal sugar. Other models stopped getting ready. Amanda, the blue-eyed blonde, chuckled softly. Marina, with her box braids, looked down awkwardly. Carlos, the assistant, pretended to organize shoes, but every fiber of his being was paying attention. "Our line is pure sophistication. Classic, you know." Silvana smiled with her lips, but her eyes remained hard as ice. Dora felt the weight of dozens of gazes cutting into her skin. She remembered her grandmother, Donna Nede, hunched over her black Singer sewing machine until 3 in the morning. "Beauty doesn't ask for permission, girl. It simply exists." The voice echoed like an ancient prayer, a song of resistance. Dora felt the weight of the calloused hands that sewed her first dresses, of the savings saved coin by coin in a cookie tin to pay for her modeling course. Each needle scar on her grandmother's hands was a step on her ladder. She took a deep breath, drawing in all the ancestry that ran through her veins like a mighty river. "I understand perfectly what you mean," Dora said, her voice as calm as deep waters concealing rapids. Silvana's eyebrow arched even higher, expecting her to withdraw like so many others. "But my presence doesn't need an invitation. It imposes itself." The backstage area fell into absolute silence. Amanda paused with her lipstick. Carlos lowered the pile of shoes. Even the air conditioning seemed to whisper more softly, as if it were also paying attention. Dora remained there, her spine straight, as if she were already parading inside. And perhaps that was exactly what bothered her most. Dora didn't move for 10 seconds that felt like 10 years. Her fingers clenched her briefcase until her knuckles turned white. The red lipstick on her lips contrasted with the pallor that had taken over her face. Around her, the movement continued, makeup brushes dancing in the air, fabrics being adjusted, whispered conversations. But she was in a bubble of silence, as if the world had been muted. A bead of sweat ran down the back of her neck, cold despite the heat of the spotlights. Marina, the model with braids, looked sideways, torn between solidarity and the fear of exposing herself. Amanda let out a sharp giggle that cut through the air like broken glass. She really thought it was going to happen. She muttered to the model next to her, loud enough for Dora to hear. Silvana returned to her iPad, as if discarding crumpled paper in the trash. The contempt needed no words. Carlos, the black assistant, avoided Dora's gaze, as if acknowledging her pain meant admitting his own vulnerability. The room silently divided. Some pretended not to see anything. Others enjoyed the gratuitous display of humiliation. Dora's isolation was almost physical, as if she were surrounded by a wall. Inside, Dora traveled to Saturdays at her grandmother's house. Donna Nady adjusted the first communion dress she had hand-sewn, stitch by stitch. "When the world says no, girl, you respond with your existence." The voice was soft, yet firm, like the roots of a centuries-old tree. Dora remembered the calloused hands touching her face. "They're afraid of our light. That's why they try to extinguish it." She felt the weight of all the black women who came before her, who forced open doors, who smiled when they wanted to cry, who remained dignified when the world insisted on diminishing them. "Can I leave my portfolio for review?" Dora asked, her voice low but clear. It wasn't a plea. It was a bridge being built over the chasm of prejudice. Silvana didn't even look up. "We're not interested, dear." "Thank you." The word, "thank you," came out like sweet spit. Marina bit her lower lip uneasily. Carlos stopped pretending to organize his clothes. Even Amanda stopped laughing, sensing something in the air had shifted. Dora placed the portfolio on the table anyway, each movement carrying an elegance that no rejection could steal. The backstage area became a silent courtroom. 15 pairs of eyes moved like spotlights, some escaping the embarrassment, others reveling in the spectacle of others' humiliation. Amanda adjusted her blonde hair into perfect waves, smiling like someone who'd just won the lottery. Marina twisted and untwisted one of her braids around her fingers, the nervous movement betraying her unease. Ricardo, the makeup artist, paused his brushes in midair, his brows furrowed in silent disapproval. The air conditioning hummed louder, as if trying to muffle the rising tension. Every breath seemed amplified, every movement calculated. Bianca, a freckled redhead, whispered something in Amanda's ear, and she burst into theatrical laughter. "The audacity," she said loudly, pretending not to mention Dora. 3 models joined the group, forming a wall of cruel complicity. On the other side, Marina exchanged a quick glance with Letitia, a brunette with curly hair. They both knew they could be next. Carlos continued arranging shoes with mechanical movements, as if concentrating on his work could erase the scene. Ricardo, however, could no longer pretend. He cleaned a brush with unnecessary force, his lips pressed into a thin line of suppressed anger. Dora observed everything as if watching a movie in slow motion. She knew that choreography of exclusion. She had seen it at school, at university, in other castings. Humanity was always divided in the same way: those who applaud cruelty, those who remain silent out of fear, and the few who are bothered enough to act. She remembered Aunt Rosa telling her about her school days, when she was the only black child in her class. Silence hurts more than screaming, Dora, because screaming at least admits you exist. She felt the ancestral weight of those moments, the endless repetition of situations where her humanity was put on trial. Ricardo dropped his brushes on the counter with a sharp thud that cut through the giggles. "She has more presence than half of those girls combined," he said loudly, breaking the pact of silence. The entire room froze. Amanda stopped laughing. Silvana looked up from her iPad for the first time in minutes. Marina smiled discreetly. Charles finally looked at Dora, a mixture of admiration and embarrassment in his eyes. "That's it, Ricardo," Letitia murmured, barely audible, but enough for Dora to hear. Ricardo picked up another brush, his hands trembling slightly. "Anyone who's been through this knows that we never forget," he said, looking directly at Dora. "If you've ever witnessed or experienced a situation like this, tell us in the comments." And it was at that moment that Dora realized isolation was making her even more magnetic. The smell of talcum powder and sewing machine oil washed over Dora like a warm wave. She was 8 years old, sitting on the cold parquet floor of Donna Nadi's living room, playing with colorful scraps while her grandmother worked. The black singer sang its metallic melody beneath her calloused fingers, each stitch a note in the symphony of survival. The yellowish light from the bare bulb hanging from the ceiling created dancing shadows on the peeling walls. Donna Nade stopped every now and then to adjust her thick glasses, sweat glistening on her dark forehead. "Come here, girl," she called, and Dora ran to stand beside the machine, mesmerized by the fabric that transformed into a dream. "Why don't you make clothes for the rich ladies, Grandma?" Dora had asked one night after watching a fashion show on television. Donna Nade had stopped the machine, the sudden silence heavy in the air. "Because they think we're only good for sewing, never for modeling," she replied, her voice thick with ancient sadness. "But one day, girl, you'll show that we can shine too." Dora remembered the dresses her grandmother made for her neighbors for church, each piece unique, every detail lovingly thought out. Donna Nade was an artist the world refused to recognize, a designer without a degree who created beauty from nothing. Back in the cold air, Dora felt her grandmother's hands in hers, teaching her the first stitches. Every thread carries a story. Girl. Our story. Donna Nade had died 3 years earlier, but she had left more than memories. She had left a purpose. Dora remembered the early mornings awake listening to the sound of the singer. The savings she had saved coin by coin in a maizena biscuit tin to pay for her modeling course. "You will walk for all of us," her grandmother had whispered from the hospital bed, her hands trembling but still holding Dora's tightly. Every rejection, every closed door, every look of contempt was a step on the ladder her grandmother had begun to build. "Always parading, girl, even standing still. You parade," echoed Dona Nede's voice. Dora whispered softly, like a prayer, "I'm parading, Grandma. I'm parading." Carlos, who was arranging clothes nearby, heard and looked at her in amazement. Marina also caught the whisper and smiled discreetly. Even Silvana, from afar, seemed bothered by Dora's inexplicable serenity. It was as if she carried an invisible force that turned rejection into fuel. Because Dora wasn't just a model looking for opportunity. She was the embodiment of a dream hand-sewn, stitch by stitch, for generations. Silvana closed the iPad with a sharp snap and approached Dora, her Louboutin heels striking a predatory rhythm on the cool marble. She wore a pristine white blazer that seemed to repel any shadow, any imperfection. Her blue-gray eyes raked Dora up and down again, this time slower, more calculated. The expensive French perfume left a cloying trail in the air. The model stopped pretending not to pay attention. Amanda smiled in anticipation, as if she already knew the show was just beginning. The entire room held its breath. Even the spotlights seemed hotter, creating a stifling atmosphere. "Honey," Silvana began, her voice as sweet as poisoned honey. "Let me explain something to you about this market." She gestured theatrically, as if giving a life lesson to a lost child. "Our clientele is very specific. They invest millions in each campaign." A dramatic pause. "Yeah, imagine a harmonious palette, soft tones, classic elegance." Her eyes narrowed with refined mischief. "And that's where you come in. Do you understand the dissonance?" Amanda let out a muffled chuckle. Bianca bit her lip to keep from laughing. Marina lowered her head, embarrassed. "It's not prejudice, it's pure aesthetics. Business, you know." Dora almost smiled. Almost. She recognized that masked speech, that violence wrapped in wrapping paper. How many times had she heard versions of the same lie? "It's not you, it's the company's profile. It's not racism, it's a market issue. It's not personal, it's professional." The irony cut her insides like a sharp blade. They didn't even have the courage to be honest about their hatred. She remembered Aunt Rosa saying, "Rich people's racism comes wrapped in silk, but it's still trash." Dora felt a strange coldness take over her chest, a dangerous calm that came from deep within. "Harmony," Dora repeated, her voice low but sharp as glass. Silvana smiled victoriously, thinking she'd won. "Exactly, you got it." But Dora continued, "Funny how harmony always means the absence of people like me." Silvana's smile faltered. "And even funnier, how you spend so much time explaining that it's not prejudice." Marina looked up in surprise. Carlos stopped pretending to work. "If it wasn't, you wouldn't have to explain so much, would you?" The room fell into an awkward silence. Amanda stopped laughing, because perhaps what was most frightening was not Dora's presence, but the sharp intelligence behind the eyes they were trying to erase. The glass door of the place opened with a whisper, and Henrique Torres entered. Gold-framed glasses reflecting the LED lights. The brand's creative director for 15 years, he carried a presence that made the room reorganize around him. Perfectly combed gray hair, a white linen shirt, measured steps on the marble. His gaze swept the room in seconds. Models lined up like dolls in a display case. Assistants pretending to be busy. The tension palpable in the air. He stopped when he saw Dora, still standing, portfolio in hand, a strange serenity radiating from her posture. Silvana paled slightly, her confident smile faltering for the first time. "Silvana," Henrique said, his deep voice cutting through the hushed atmosphere. "Where's the diversity we discussed at the meeting?" His eyes fixed on Dora, then swept over the other models, blondes, redheads, light-skinned brunettes, all within the same safe framework. Silvana cleared her throat nervously. "Henrique, I was just explaining matters of aesthetic harmony." The word came out shakily. Amanda stopped smiling. Marina raised her head hopefully. Carlos finally looked directly at the scene. Harmony? Enrique repeated, eyebrows arched. Or monotony. The awkwardness spread through the room like ink in water. Dora observed the shift in power with the patience of someone who always knew this moment would come. It wasn't a surprise, it was confirmation. She remembered her carpenter father measuring wood. Patience, daughter. Every structure has its weak point. Our strength lies in knowing how to wait for the right moment to apply pressure. She felt no premature victory, nor relief, only the ancestral certainty that truth always finds a crack to emerge. Her fingers tightened on her portfolio with renewed determination. The universe had its own justice, slow but inexorable. Who is she? Enrique asked, discreetly pointing at Dora. The question echoed like a sentence. Silvana hesitated, searching for words that wouldn't compromise her. A candidate who doesn't fit the current profile. Enrique walked over to Dora, extending his hand. Enrique Torres, creative director. And you are? Dora Silva, she replied, her voice firm, her handshake firm. Model for 3 years, graduated in fashion design. Enrique smiled. Recall her, now. Silvana opened her mouth to protest, but the words died in the air, and Dora remained motionless for a few seconds that seemed eternal. Not because she hesitated, but because she knew that walking when told to was different from walking when she chose to. Dora took 3 slow steps toward Silvana, each movement laden with an elegance that transformed the room into a theater stage. The LED lights created a natural spotlight on her, as if the environment itself were conspiring in her favor. The sound of her heels on the marble echoed like the beats of an ancient drum. Silvana instinctively recoiled, her back touching the makeup table. Foundation bottles trembled slightly. The entire room stopped. Brushes suspended in midair, conversations cut short, breaths held. Marina smiled for the first time all afternoon. Carlos lifted his chest with vicarious pride. Enrique crossed his arms, curious to see what would happen. Silvana, Dora said, her voice low but carrying to every corner of the room. Can I ask you a question? Silvana nodded nervously, her hands fiddling with her badge lanyard. How many black models have walked for your brand in the last 5 years? The silence was deafening. Amanda stopped fiddling with her phone. Bianca pretended to search for something in her bag. It's a complex market issue, Silvana began. Complex? Dora interrupted. Or comfortable? The word dropped like a bombshell. Enrique approached, interested. The awkwardness spread like ripples on a still lake. Dora felt all the black women who came before her pulsing through her veins. The seamstress grandmother, the teacher Aunt Rosa, the cleaning lady mother who saved every penny for her studies. All of them there, in that moment, speaking through her voice. It's not just about me, she thought. It's about all of us who have been barred, silenced, erased. She felt the weight and responsibility of representation, but also the collective strength that came from this awareness. Every word that came from her mouth now would carry the echo of generations. It's not personal, Silvana said, repeating the mantra she used to justify decades of exclusion. Dora smiled, but it wasn't a sweet smile. Exactly, Silvana. It's not personal. Pause. It's structural. The word echoed like a gong. And today, Dora continued, pulling a folded dress from her bag, I'm not just wearing an outfit. She unfolded the fabric, a golden dress that shone like a rising sun. I'm wearing a cause. Enrique applauded softly. Marina murmured, Wow. Even Amanda stopped feigning indifference. Ricardo, the makeup artist, wiped a tear from his eye. That's what true representation is, he said aloud. Anyone who's never felt invisible doesn't know what that means. If you were in her shoes, how would you react? Tell us in the comments. Because sometimes revolution doesn't come with shouts. It comes dressed in gold and speaking truths that no one wants to hear. The show's music began playing on the other side of the wall, a pulsating electronic beat that made the floor vibrate slightly. Suddenly, the door flew open, and Julia, the production assistant, rushed in, her face pale with despair. Enrique, Camilla's taken ill. She's been to the hospital. We need a replacement now. Her words cut through the air like sharp blades. The room erupted in nervous murmurs. Amanda straightened, expecting to be chosen. Bianca quickly fixed her hair. Marina held her breath. But Enrique's eyes immediately fixed on Dora, who remained as serene as deep water, the golden dress still in her hands. "Dora," Enrique said, his firm voice cutting through the chaos. "Are you ready?" Silvana opened her mouth in silent protest, but no sound came out. Amanda frowned in disbelief. "Enrique, don't you think it would be better?" Silvana tried réti, but he interrupted her with a gesture. "You better what? Let prejudice decide business?" The sentence echoed like a slap in the face to all the hypocrisy present. Carlos smiled broadly. Marina clapped softly. Ricardo whispered, "Finally." Power had changed hands in the blink of an eye, like a house of cards collapsing and rebuilding itself in a new configuration. Dora felt the universe aligning, as if each previous rejection had been merely a stepping stone to arrive exactly there, at that moment. "Grandma, our time has come," she thought, remembering Donna Nade's words. "What is rightfully yours always finds a way to reach you." It wasn't luck. It was cosmic justice. It wasn't chance. It was consequence. Every stitch sewn by her grandmother, every sacrifice her mother made, every tear swallowed in silence had built this bridge between exclusion and representation. She wasn't just replacing a model. She was embodying decades of deferred dreams. Dora donned the gold gown in a fluid movement, as if it had been tailored specifically for her body. The fabric hugged every curve, every angle, transforming her into a modern goddess. Enrique nodded in approval. "Perfect." From the other side of the wall, the announcer's voice echoed, "And now, we present our surprise star." When Dora appeared on the catwalk, the audience erupted in instant and prolonged applause. People stood, cell phones were raised. "Who is this woman?" asked someone in the front row. "This is Dora Silva," replied a journalist, already typing frantically. "And you will remember that name." Backstage, Marina hugged Carlos, both with tears in their eyes. "This is what happens when we don't give up," Ricardo said. "Share this story with anyone who needs to remember that our presence is also power." And Silvana, for the first time in years, understood the difference between occupying space and transforming space simply by existing. Back in her dressing room, Dora sat in front of the mirror framed by lamps that still pulsed like stars. Her golden dress reflected the light, creating a halo around her. Her hands trembled slightly, not from nerves, but from the adrenaline of someone who had just made history. Outside, the applause, the camera flashes, and the journalists' voices shouting questions still echoed. She opened her worn leather bag and removed a small silver brooch, a sewing needle that had belonged to her grandmother, Donna Nade. The item shone discreetly, but carried the weight of decades of deferred dreams. Marina entered the dressing room, her eyes red with emotion. "Dora, you didn't do this just for yourself. You did it for all of us." Carlos appeared in the doorway, smiling broadly. "The internet is already talking about you, the model who turned rejection into revolution." Ricardo approached with a handkerchief, also moved. "My daughter will see this video and know it's possible." Even Silvana passed by the door, avoiding direct eye contact, but murmured a barely audible, "Congratulations." The victory wasn't just individual, it was collective, ancestral, transformative. Dora pinned the brooch to her dress, right over her heart. She closed her eyes and felt her grandmother's presence, not as a memory, but as a living force pulsing through her veins. "We did it, Grandma," she whispered. She saw all the black women who came before her, those who sewed in silence, those who cleaned other people's houses to sustain their dreams, those who forced open doors so she could walk, and she also saw those who would come after. Black girls seeing this moment and knowing it was possible. Continuity was assured. Dora looked in the mirror and spoke, as if speaking to all generations. "Today, we parade together. Grandma, all of us." Her voice was low, but carried the power of an ancient mantra. Marina shivered. Carlos nodded silently. Ricardo smiled through his tears. The phrase echoed in the dressing room like a blessing, a promise, a declaration of victory that transcended the individual and embraced the collective. A black girl of about 8 appeared at the door with her mother, her eyes wide with wonder. "Can I take a picture with you?" she asked shyly. Dora smiled and hugged her. In the snap, 2 generations connected, one who opened the door and the other who would walk through it more easily. Dora stood up, the brooch shining like a guiding star. If this story touched and inspired you, please like and subscribe to the channel, because our presence transforms everything, and together we build a world where existing with dignity is a right, not an achievement. Existing with dignity is the most powerful parade anyone can do, and today we all parade together.